To Andrechuk shooting, score! Dave Andrechuk hits the 50 mark. Down the backing, Clark races him. Holy Mackinac, he's got three!
Hello, Leaf fans. Welcome to the Leafs Lounge. My name is Josh, here as always with my co-host, Justin Kudo. How are we doing today, Justin?
Doing it great, long weekend for some of us. And just 2-0 for the Leafs.
Yeah.
The Buds continue their winning ways, now 7 straight. 5 straight
Incredible.
home games now. Some big tests coming up against the Bruins and the Rangers, the top tier in the Atlantic for some. And we're going to see how we compare, really.
For sure. It's going to be exciting. It's nice to kind of have that 5-game home stretch. We'll see if they can take advantage beginning tonight. Just before we get going on to the topics, for audience, if you guys are tuning in for the first time, obviously appreciate that. If you want to catch some previous videos that we've done, you can find us through the Sports Fluent account, and the videos are all up there on YouTube or Facebook. So go and check them out, and appreciate if you guys keep tuning in. And we're going to keep bringing some hot takes to you and all the best topics we'll be covering on the Toronto Maple Leafs. So let's get into it. I don't think we'd be doing this episode justice if we didn't kind of do a recap, kind of talking about the road trip that ended in great fashion with a 4-3 win over the Avalanche, which obviously followed a 7-3 win over the Vegas Knights. So I think kind of putting to bed a little bit of maybe that narrative that the Leafs were just kind of showing this renewed focus on team defense against NHL doormats. They obviously were able to put their best foot forward and get 2 very impressive wins over some quality opponents. Justin, where are you at in terms of what you've seen? And I guess kind of looking prior to this 7-game heater, and I don't think it was coming from you or I, but there was a lot of media, a lot of fans that, before this run of success, fans were saying, yeah, you know what? I don't know if this is the year to go all in. You might just kind of stand pat and kind of wait for next year, because it didn't look like the Leafs were going to be able to address the issues or the areas of concern. Where are you now? Obviously, not suggesting it's time to get the parade going, like is typical with, the haters. But where are you at in terms of your confidence level on what this team can do come postseason?
Super confident in this team. And, I fall victim to the parade planning all the time.
We all do.
Just with the way this team looks and the way they're playing right now, there's no doubt in my mind that we have the depth scoring finally. The stars are all contributing at such an elite level. Why can't we compete in the playoffs? I don't think that Boston is much of a worry for me right now. I know when it comes playoff time, they're going to turn like super defensive. They have their physical play, and Pasternak will be Pasternak and Martian will be Martian. Yes, I got all that. But this Leafs team is just so much better than they were 2 months ago. And I'm not just saying that because of the recent hot streak, but it also comes down to Keefe's defensive style, which has showed up for years and years. Leafs have always been pretty good at goals against. And after starting really bad with the goals really high, it didn't help that goaltending was kind of weak with Samsonov, giving up 4 or 5 goals a night, basically. And he's turned things around. But right now it's 2-3 goals max, probably more around the 1 or 2 range.
Right.
And you saw against Vegas, we were up 6-1 after 2 periods. Then the team kind of let their foot off the gas a bit. And before you know it, it's 6-3. And I'm holding my breath. I'm like, should I go to sleep? I don't really know if I should anymore.
Yeah. I think the entire fan base was holding their breath. But yeah, we've seen obviously it's a different team.
The team just, they got their footing back in the 3rd period. They found their game again. And Matthews scored, made it 7-3, and then they kind of just ran away with the 3rd period again like they had for the previous 40 minutes. There was a
For
little
sure.
6-7 minute dull at the start of the third, as to be kind of expected when you're up 6-1 and you're kind of like, okay, road trip's almost done. We're almost home. We've been on the road for over a week now. It kind of got there.
Yeah.
But that just makes me, and I was kind of worried heading into Colorado after that third period, because I was like, man, the Leafs, maybe they're slowing down a bit heading into their last road game. And then they come out, and even though they're down 2-0 early, they played a great first period. They get rewarded with that late power play, and Bertuzzi scored, made it 2-1. And then I felt like the Leafs kind of had a lot of possession, and they played a really strong game against Colorado for the remainder.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Obviously get rewarded with Bertuzzi coming up, huge hat trick game.
The birthday boy.
And
the birthday boy Hattie.
Birthday boy. And the power play just continues to chug along. And I guess you're seeing that maybe Bertuzzi can be a permanent cog on that PP1, and JT.
He has to be now. He has to be right now.
Yeah. I mean, with all these guys starting to step up and play better, it's going to give Keefe more options to play around with the lineup and, reward guys who are playing well.
100%. So in terms of like how they've been playing recently, has that kind of changed what you would want the focus to be for Treliving at the trade deadline? Like you talked about
it's
the way the defense is played. Are you saying
for me it's all in on a Riley partner?
Right.
Then secondary would be a depth forward that can help with the penalty kill.
Yeah, definitely need a PK. I think that D-man who you would get for Riley needs to be a PK guy as well, because our PK trash right now.
Yeah, but I also think Yarkrook will help a lot with the PK when he comes back.
Good. Yeah.
Right. But definitely all in on a first pairing top 4 right-hand defenseman that can be a partner, maybe not just for this year, but long-term for Riley as well.
Yeah, if you could find someone with term, I think that would be ideal. Yeah, that might cost you quite a bit more if you're talking about, I'm not sure he's even a target, but Parayko,
it's a first-round pick easily, right?
Yeah, so, and it might prove to be more. I mean, the Flames are even asking for a first for Tanev that I think would be a crazy overpay. He doesn't even have term. So if you find a guy who right shot D-man could play in your top 4, and whether that's an Adam Larson type, who knows? Yeah, that's going to cost you a first plus probably a decent prospect. So it will be expensive, but I feel the same way. I think, I was not on the train before of, not doing anything, not being a buyer, even when things weren't looking very good, because I just felt that you're pot committed on this core. And you can say whatever you want, that these guys haven't delivered in big playoff games, and there's no way to argue that. But at the same time, I don't see why you stand pat and wait for something different to arrive next year, where you're still not going to have a lot of cap room. So that's not going to change anything. You're still going to rely on the core guys to be what takes you in a deep playoff run and takes you over the top. So for me, it was always, this is, again, an all-in type of mindset where if that guy is out there, that impact blue liner, a top 9 forward who can really help you, and as you said, get on the PK, I think you do it. And I just don't understand not thinking that should be the strategy. So
every year with the core 4, the Leafs should not have a first-round pick.
Agreed.
I think that you having a first-round pick in the 20s, obviously, sometimes you hit on them, like it appears we have with Cowan. But a lot of times, picks in the late 20s, hopefully 32, don't turn out to be especially great NHL players, just historically based, right? So,
well, and even if they do, you won't see him for 4 or 5 years, probably, right? I bet
he's not going to make a real impact on the team while we're actually competitive, right? So,
correct.
I'd rather the Leafs, who have a pretty good history of scouting and getting guys undrafted or later in the later rounds, especially overseas in like Russia and Sweden area. I'd rather we just continue taking shots on these guys and hopefully you hit eventually, right?
Yeah, because I think anyone you draft starting from this summer and beyond, you have to start thinking about, will they be able to help this team during the Matthews window? And we don't know. There's a chance Matthews does re-sign when his contract's over. He's got 4 more years now based on his extension. You have to almost assume that you've got that 4-year window, right? Like once Matthews is gone, if he does choose to leave, who knows what you're going to have available or how you're going to replace him. Obviously, every Leaf fan assumes we're getting McDavid. But talking realistically, you have to, and I'm sure whether it's between Shanahan and Tree Living, they're looking at that. Okay, we extended Matthews. We got 4 more years after this one. So let's say we got 5 years of this window. You have to your point, if you're giving up your first round pick each of those years, I'm okay with that because hopefully it's returning a guy who's going to help you make that playoff push. And yes, I'm not saying give up your first and Cowan and Minton and Niemela in a trade, because I just don't think there's that many impact guys you can get between now and the trade deadline next week. The guys that seem to be available, hopefully you shouldn't have to put in Cowan into that trade. But for the most part, within reason, I'm willing to kind of push a lot of those chips in for a shot, because I think what we've seen with this team is they're not that far off from being in that top tier of Stanley Cup contenders. I think we've even seen with what they've got now, they're starting to kind of get into that conversation where, based on beating Colorado, Vegas, you got to start talking to them in that top 5-6 teams of Stanley Cup contenders.
100%. Yeah.
Right. But if you also make a move and you improve your blue line and maybe a top 9 forward, I have them firmly in that top 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think definitely top 4 or 5 right now. For people that are saying the Jets or Canucks are bigger Stanley Cup threats than the Leafs, like how? What makes you think that? Then you can say playoff performances, but Vancouver's not been in the playoffs for how many years?
Yeah.
Winnipeg, when was the last time they did anything in the playoffs? It's been
I think everyone would be talking about like the goaltending. That goaltending edge, I think they look at that Hellebuck Demko. That makes you a Stanley Cup contender, fair or unfair. If you have goaltending like that, it probably at least keeps you on the map. So I don't disagree talking about them as contenders, but if you're Vancouver, you're going to have to go through Vegas and Edmonton just to get to the conference finals.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to face the first, if they hold on to their lead in the Pacific, which I assume they will by just the sheer amount of points they have on Vegas and Edmonton.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to get
the wild card team if you stay there.
The fifth Metro or the 5th Central team. So St. Louis, Nashville kind of quality.
Yeah. Flames, whoever makes it
Flames,
there. Yeah.
Maybe if they make a push.
Yeah.
Right. That's okay. You should be able to deal with that in round 1.
Yeah.
But then in round 2, you're facing Vegas or Edmonton
or Vegas.
And then in round 3, you're facing most likely Colorado or Dallas. And I watched Dallas last night, and that team is deep. Dallas has 4 lines of forwards. All of them are super skilled, know their role, and they can all score.
And their D is good. A lot of good.
Defense is good. Ottinger's a really good goalie.
Yeah.
Dallas, I think, would probably be my number 1 contender.
In the West?
In the West.
That's fair. They're a good team.
That's a deep team. So
yeah, I think the West is definitely tougher this year than it has been in the past. I think you have 5 or 6 teams that you can say could legitimately come out of there, where I don't think you've had that in prior years. But I mean, obviously playing the devil's advocate, you can have the same conversation about Toronto's chances, because if they remain in that 3rd spot, you're going through probably Florida and Boston just to get to the conference finals.
It's no different than every year. Yeah, it's no different than every year. Start with Boston, face Florida or Tampa, or then the next round, if you make it there, then you're facing Rangers or Carolina.
Crazy.
And it's just an absolute. But that's what you have to do in order to win the cup. There's no easy route, right?
Yeah, you can't avoid them, and I think that's where a lot of the shade was thrown at the idea of the Maple Leafs being buyers at the deadline. Because it's like, Well, what? You think you can beat Florida? If you don't think you can beat Florida, then you shouldn't be going all in. It's like, haven't we learned from like last year where everyone was saying you don't want to go all in because the Boston Bruins are an absolute wagon. So don't go all in this year because the Bruins already have the cup won and they were bounced in the first round. So I would hope no one who actually gets paid working in the NHL would ever have that mentality of, yeah, you know what? That Florida team over there is pretty darn good. I don't think we should make any trades because we can't beat them. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. And like Florida's a quality hockey team, but just like every other team in the NHL, they have weaknesses in their lineup as well. So I feel like if you're actually going to go, I feel like this trade deadline is going to be super active.
I hope.
I feel like there's going to be some teams like the Kraken that if they're going to be sellers at the deadline and they have a lot of pieces that
especially
would be enticing to contending teams.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like their D is loaded. I don't know how many of those guys are even available, but between Alexiak, Adam Larson, Will Borgen, Brian Dumoulin, like there are a lot of guys that could help your team if you're a playoff contender. If Seattle's looking to move them, I've heard maybe Adam Larson isn't available. I don't think Jamie Alexiak would be a guy that you would be able to pry off that team unless you're massively overpaying. But yeah, who knows what Ron Francis wants to do there. If they think they want to do a retool and a team's willing to pay their asking price for like a Larson, I think Seattle could be active.
So the more like Woll got called up from his conditioning stint yesterday.
Let's go.
And so now we come to the point where he's going to be activated sooner or later, probably sometime this week.
Probably.
At that point, what happens with Martin Jones? Do you think they're searching for a trade to get a pick back for him? Or do you think they'll just hold 3 goalies or maybe even waivers at this point? What do you think?
Yeah, it's tough. And to even further complicate it, this is more down the road, but Matt Murray, our friend, has been taking some shots, apparently, getting some pucks on goal. So that presents something else potentially for the playoffs because I don't know why he's on the ice facing shots if he's just working to convince a team to bring him over in the summer. You know, I think there's something that maybe he wants to expedite his rehabilitation, return to the ice. So I think they've at least had a conversation about, hey, we're obviously not going to have the cap room to bring you in before the playoffs, but potentially an option there. And the reason I bring that up is kind of to your question. I think you can't put like a Martin Jones or a Samsonov on waivers again because they probably would get claimed. So I think 100%. You're looking only at a trade. And I don't know, like we've talked about it before, where based on the very minimal cap hit that both Wall and Jones have, you probably could just keep rolling with 3 goalies unless someone blows you away with an offer for one of those guys. I'd be more willing to consider a Samsonov trade because that would clear your 3.5, assuming you don't have to retain. But obviously with that, the expectation or the provision with that would be you've got faith in Wall that he's healthy and ready to go. Mm-hmm. You do expect that Matt Murray, if required, would be an option for you in the playoffs. If you check the box on those, I'd be curious to see if you could move Samsonov for at least maybe a draft pick that could help you in your pursuit.
It would have to, in order to move Samsonov at this point, it would have to be a darn good draft pick, or it would have to be a part of a package that we're getting a pretty darn good player. Because obviously there was a point in time a few months ago where Samsonov was put on waivers, but
no one claimed him.
No one claimed him. Yeah. At this point, I think he's recouped all his value. I think he's
close to it, if not fully. Yep.
I think if he hadn't been put on waivers earlier this year and the Leafs weren't the Leafs, I think he would easily fetch a first-round pick.
Could be.
A
I mean, yeah,
a
we were
goalie
talking about
like that,
earlier.
a goalie
Marc-Andre
like that
Fleury
would easily
might
get
be
a
a
first
first.
round pick. Yeah. With team
Yeah,
control. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think it's fair. I mean, the fact that he's a UFA, and I think there are going to be concerns by other teams on what they saw from Samsonov up until whether it was like December, January, we started turning things around. But from my perspective, I'd be less concerned about what value he might have to other teams. It would be more about, okay, if Matt Murray, if you feel as an organization he is an option for you come playoff time, you don't need to keep four capable goalies. It almost just feels like overkill.
Yeah.
So I guess we don't know, or obviously we don't know what sort of return you could get for Samsonov. But if it's anything close to what you're saying, like a first round pick, I think you have to move him. I think it's just going to be, if you know Wall's like your guy and healthy, and I know you only have a little over a week to figure that out, so it's kind of tight, but I don't see any issue with moving a guy, Samsonov, who probably a 90% chance you will not be re-signing him in the offseason.
Yeah, but for me, it's kind of like we have to make it to the playoffs first, and you don't want to fall off at the end and start losing a ton of games because Martin Jones is forced to play every night because Wool got injured again.
100%.
Wool hasn't. I love Wool. I think he's a great goalie. He proved last year in the playoffs that he could be that number one guy, but he hasn't proven he has the ability to stay healthy long term. And so at this point, it really only does make sense to hold three goalies. And in the case that Matt Murray does, in fact, return for playoffs some way, I don't think he'll play anyways. But
he'd be your backup.
He's always there for that veteran, presence, or if God forbid all the goalies go down, at least we have Matt Murray.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't see him as anything more than insurance, but if you get like let's kind of look ahead to this week. We know Samsonov is playing tonight. Thursday against Arizona, let's just say optimistically, everything from Wall's recovery checks the boxes in terms of their confidence level and bring him in. He plays in Arizona, looks really good. You maybe give him like the Saturday game, or you maybe go back to Sammy, but then Wall gets in one more game against either Boston or Buffalo next week. And he looks really good in that game as well. Then your next Friday,
I think it goes 50-50. I think if Wall comes back and he looks good, I think they'll just do the Boston kind of rotation of the goalies. I think that if you have two goalies that are going at once, it's better than just having one goalie, right? So,
for sure. And I'm just more saying if Wall looks good in those two games, then come trade deadline, if someone's saying, yeah, I'll give you a first round or a second round pick for Samsonov. Like, it sounds like it's still a no for you, but for me, I think knowing that you don't have a lot of draft capital to get that top four blue liner, that right hand shot option to play alongside Riley, that to me could be an area where you both save cap room, because we know Samsonov 3.5 cap hit. If you could bring that back into, or use that money to reallocate into a D-man, I'm kind of thinking that's the move, but I get it. It would be tough because you wouldn't have enough of a runway with Wall as a healthy goaltender giving you that confidence. So I definitely see both sides of it.
See, what was Korpisalo traded for last year? Do you remember?
Can't remember offhand.
Okay, so he did get a first
and a
third.
Though. Okay.
For him and that was it Gavrikov, they got the Blue Jackets got a first and a third. I definitely think Samsonov, he's around that range.
That's fair. Yep.
I would say. So if you assume that Gavrikov was kind of maybe they're both like a second and it evens out to a first and a third, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I still think you're on the right track there in terms of establishing value for Samsonov. It's could probably be around the second, especially if there's a team like maybe the Avalanche, who's looking for that. either 1A, 1B tandem with Georgiev. I know they like him. He's played a lot of games, but we were talking about it before we jumped on. Like, yeah, is Colorado a team who could be hunting for a goalie? And there's other teams as well who probably don't have that confidence in their backup or even their number one guys. So maybe that return is there for Sammy.
Yeah, I just got a notification saying that Liljegren is not playing tonight.
Ooh, hot off the press. See, so, I saw before we jumped on that he wasn't at the optional practice today. So that's where I thought that meant he was
yesterday
good to go.
As well.
Yeah.
So that means that likely Giordano draws back in.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see what Keefe does with the D pairs now, because I assume it's probably brought back to Brody Riley.
Well, in practice, he had Riley and Benoit and Brody McCabe. So does he go right back to that? That was kind of interesting. Riley and
Giordano
Benoit
with Legason as the third pair.
Yeah, and they won't play at all.
I could live with that. Giordano's good he's good for the PK. He blocks a lot of shots.
That's about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Anything that doesn't require too much foot speed, that's where Giordano can excel still.
Exactly. If he doesn't have to move up the ice with the puck, that's where you want him.
After I saw the way Riley got smoked by McKinnon on Saturday, if it was Giordano, he'd still be lost in Colorado right now.
Very likely. Very likely. But the thing that worries me with Lily out, you don't have a single right shot D-man playing tonight.
Yeah,
it's 6 lefties. That's awful. That's awful, and just kind of emphasizes the importance of getting a right shot D. Like, even with Lily, you need to have at least 2 right shot D. Even if you think McCabe or Brody can fill in there. Like Simone Benoit, when he was asked to play on the right side a couple times this year, and I remember even the preseason, results of that, not good. Not good.
Especially since he hasn't been playing especially well. I don't know how he played against but I didn't think he played.
Not great.
A couple games, I feel like everybody played well against Vegas for the most part. It was just one of those games. But there was a couple games last week where he made some mistakes against Arizona and St. Louis, where maybe he's more meant for the sheltered third pairing role. But it's going to be interesting to see if he can play alongside Riley. I don't think that even if he does play well tonight and Thursday, it would be considered a long-term fix at all. At least I hope not. But
I think the thing that tells me, and we've seen it in terms of the ice time since Riley's come back, is it until, and this is obviously an if and when kind of scenario, until there's a higher quality right shot D-man that they feel confident playing with Riley is no longer on your D1 pair. Like tonight, it will be Brody and McCabe who get the majority of the minutes. So that tells me that maybe they didn't see it before Riley's suspension, but clearly since he's come back, and I guess there could be something about
he's definitely going to ease
him back in. But it feels like a scenario like it was in the postseason last year, where even Riley and Shen, as well as they played as a pair, they weren't your first pair D-men. Like, they were playing more. Obviously, there was a lot of games that went to OT, but in a regulation game, Riley and Shen were being held to 20 minutes a night. So it's kind of an indictment on Riley's, I guess, D-zone play, and where I think the coaching staff feels that they can rely on Riley and whoever's playing with him in terms of the ice time. Like, I think right now it's Brody McCabe is your first pair, and we'll see what happens at the trade deadline. But I think Riley's been bumped down, and I think it makes sense.
He's played 20 minutes. Yeah, he played 20 minutes on Saturday, and then I just looked. It was 18 and a half on Thursday, but that was a weird one because we were up by so much. The lines were just rolling for the most part.
Yeah.
So if he's hovering around now with Liljegren out, he'll probably be back up to 23, 24 tonight, I expect.
Yeah.
I think for him,
especially if they get power plays. Yeah.
Yeah, power play time changes that as well. For him, I would like Riley if he's out there 23 and a half. That's probably, a little. He was playing like 26 minutes earlier this year.
Yeah,
Being
that
around
didn't work
that
out very well.
the low
Didn't work out well.
20s, being around the low 20s range is more fitting for him because
Yeah.
he's not exactly a part of your shutdown pair.
No.
And
Yeah, like
if you had a
if
big D zone face off, say a minute and a half left in the third, you're probably not going to have Riley out there.
exactly. Yeah, you don't want him on your defensive zone draws, I feel, and yeah, unless it's going to be a game where there's a lot of power plays, which come postseason, don't expect that to be the case. So to me, yeah, I think you need to make sure. And look, this obviously presumes that you're not getting a Petrangelo or Drew Doughty at the trade deadline to play with Riley. If it's going to be even more like a Chris Tanev type, yeah, I still think Riley is your D2 pair. Like, I'd be more confident with whether it's McCabe and Lilly, whether it's Brody and McCabe. Like, I'm not a big Brody guy, but in terms of like, who am I more confident playing against top opposition lines? Yeah, it's a pair that doesn't have Riley on it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I if we're facing a Boston in the first round, the D pair I'd like out there against Pasternak would most likely be, so believe it or not, I'd probably want Riley out there against Pasternak. I don't know if I would trust a McCabe Benoit pairing to keep up with a Pasternak and Marchand line.
It would be tough to trust any of our D pairs. I think, they are definitely, they've proven to be obviously playing better, more capable. But yeah, we don't have a shutdown defensive pair, no matter how you piece it together. For me, it's just Riley's play in the defensive zone. Yes, you want his puck moving ability, but we've seen the Maple Leafs have more success with the guys like Benoit, McCabe, even when they brought in guys like Max Lajoie, William Lagesson, guys who just say, you know what, I don't need to make a play here. I don't need to try and send Nylander away on a breakaway every time I have the puck. I'm just going to put it off the boards, off the glass and out and live to see the next shift. And against a Pasternak, I might want to see more of that than Riley trying to backhand saucer a puck out of the zone. And it ends up being a absolute pizza,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard because you love Riley's puck moving abilities that not a lot of our defense have outside of maybe Liljegren and Brody on occasion.
Right.
Because the Leafs play a very puck possession heavy game. Like they're the best when they have the puck on their stick and they're entering the zone with possession rather than getting in the corner and chasing after it. Even though I think lately they've actually been really good at puck retrievals. Just Bertuzzi, Domi,
improved.
Nyes in the corner. Like these guys are playing a lot better. And even the fourth line, I feel, because the fourth line out of the four obviously are the only ones who really dump and chase.
Yeah.
But
pretty much.
I think even the fourth line has had great shifts. I remember there was a time against Vegas where they had a minute and a half in the offensive zone. And it was Revo with like 3 scoring chances. Camp scored. Holmberg scored. Like the fourth line was going. So with that that fourth line, like keep them together. Gregor should not find his way back in.
No, and he won't be playing tonight. And I guess that's a good segue because I was looking at the reports from the optional practice today, and it looks like Yarncroke is getting back on the ice. He could be an option, probably not this week, but more next week. Mm-hmm. Where are you at if you had to say, once Yarncroke is back, who's the odd man out? Like, is it just as simple to say Ryan Reeves is the odd man out?
No.
Or do you want to see him? Like, who would come out then?
I think, unfortunately, and maybe you'll disagree with me, I think at this point it's Nick Robertson.
You won't hear any argument from me on that one.
I think
I'm with you.
He doesn't have, I don't think he fits what that third line role is meant to be. Robertson is more of a top 6 player, but the thing is, the Leafs don't have room for him in the top 6.
Well, and shoot, like I get it. He probably needs more power play time. He needs more opportunity with better playmakers.
Yeah.
I get all that. But he's not, as you said, he's not getting that here. So at some point, if you can't create your offense as a one-dimensional offensive winger who so many Leaf fans are still of this mindset that don't trade Nick Robertson. He's going to we're going to look back in 3 or 4 years and he's going to be some crazy stud scoring 30 or 40 a year. I'm so past that in terms of what Robertson could be. We've done this with so many of our prospects. I get it. He's really talented. He's not the first small player who lit up the OHL for a very short period of time, lit up the AHL, and then didn't make any sort of impact in the NHL. He won't be the first guy. So I just hate the kind of conversation. We got to keep trusting Nick Robertson. The dude has 1 goal in his last 11 or 12 games.
Yeah, 12 games. For 1 goal in 12 games.
Yeah. What the heck are we waiting for at this point?
No,
if you can get a return for him, I'm putting him in a trade.
Exactly. I think putting Robertson in a package along with a pick can fetch you a pretty darn good right-hand defenseman. I think a lot of teams around the league still value Nick Robertson pretty highly as a guy who tore up the AHL, tore up all junior, has a really good shot, and just hasn't been given top 6 chances.
I think there'd be interest. There would be interest.
I think that he still has a lot of opportunity to excel, but it's unfortunately likely not going to be here in Toronto.
Yeah, and I think we've seen, when we talk about limited opportunity, we've seen a guy like McMahon, we've seen guys like Holmberg do more with their limited ice time than Nick Robertson has. So I get it. You want to hold on to everybody. And it also kind of is probably a conversation about who are we willing to give up at the trade deadline. And everyone's like, yeah, I'd love to get a top right-handed D to play with Riley, but you better not be trading a first. You better not be trading Minton, Lilly, Robertson. And it's like, how do you think we're going to get that then?
I know. Well,
our prospect pool is not that deep. One of those guys has to move.
I saw some people on Twitter kind of trying to think up lines as usual. It's pretty common now.
Armchair GMs. I love that.
Armchair GMs. Yeah, exactly. But the one I kind of have come around to the most is if you want to really give that third line an identity, I think that means that you have to move Nyes down from the first line to the third line to play with McMahon and Tavares. Just a couple hardworking, big wingers that can go in corners and grind out pucks for Tavares. I think that could be a good third line. And then you have Yarncroke, who has some chemistry already playing on top line in the past with Matthews and Marner. You could throw him up there and give him that. It's another kind of defensively sound winger that scored 20 goals.
Yeah, I think for me, the Yarncroke line 1 experiment died after seeing what he did last postseason. I totally get. I mean, he obviously played well at times when he was with Matthews last year. And yeah, look, he's not a, it's not like he wouldn't impact at all. I think if you're going to go against Florida and Boston, I think you need someone a little bit more offensively capable because you're going to be limited in terms
that's
of
what
how
Matthews
many
is for.
chances.
That's what Matthews and Marner are for with those.
I know, but we saw against Florida, it was not enough. And I don't know if I feel like this enough, but
this beast of Matthews, I'm looking back at Florida last year. I can't compare the Leafs teams because of just how much better Matthews is than last year.
That's fair, probably. That's fair.
He's just so far and away better than he was last year, more healthy, especially.
Yeah.
That
I still don't know if that means he just can go completely beast mode if Marner does his typical kind of playoff style where he ends up getting further away from the net and from the areas where you need to go to win playoff games, win puck battles. And then all Matt Matthews has available to him is Calle Yarncroke. I would just be a little bit worried about that. But
in that case, then you make a good point. In that case, it's easy just switching back Knies and Yarncroke plays with Tavares, who he's also spent a lot of time playing with.
Yep.
He's spent a lot of time on that second line with Nylander and Tavares in the past. So he has that repertoire, and you have McMahon with him, who's continuing to play well.
With that. Yeah. Right? I mean, I think for me, it obviously feels like whether you're at, I think when Yarncroke comes back, you've got at least 14 forwards that, probably warrant getting ice time on an NHL team. We talk about Robertson, Gregor, Ryan Reeves, and I think they're pot committed on Ryan Reeves. So whether you believe he's going to be playing every game come postseason remains to be seen. But I think he's either your 12th or your 13th. So I think with Robertson, I think Yarncroke has a spot right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if because of that glut of forwards that they have right now, that, we've said maybe it's a Nick Robertson trade to look at, but I feel like there might be a plan for True Living to add a top 9 forward. There would be an upgrade over one or two of those guys. And then you're finding a way to
exactly,
whether you're
you have to
trading
bring in someone to help the PK, right? So you bring in someone to help the PK, and all of a sudden now you have 14 NHL forwards,
right?
And so it makes the
most. And if Yarncroke and Camp
15, really, if you want to,
if you add without subtracting, you're at 15.
You're at 15 guys, So then you're moving Gregor's on waivers. Then Robertson in a trade. Now you're back at 13. That's a nice number to have, right?
Yeah. It feels a little bit congested right now. And I feel if you're going to add a top 9 forward who can help you out in your PK, then you start to wonder, okay, well, do we really need Yarncroke and David Kampf here? Do we need 3 guys who basically their main impact for this team is their ability to help out on the PK? So I don't know how you find a way to move David Kampf, but that would be, if you could, and you could get that contract off the books, that would be incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just don't know if they'll be able to.
It's going to be hard to find a dance partner for that one.
Agreed. You might have to retain. You might have to get some other team involved to retain. But, you start looking at the options in terms of how did the Maple Leafs find cap room to add, whether it's a top 9D or top 4D and a top 9 forward without moving someone like a Yarncroke, a David Kampf, a TJ Brody, a Samsonov. It feels like the cap savings has to come from one of those 4 guys.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's the problem when you have like so many no move clauses and you just handing them out like candy. I feel like everybody has one. You take a look, you can't move him. He has a no trade. Even Brody has a partial no move.
Yeah, he's got a no move.
Trading him's going to be hard.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I wanted to get your thoughts on, obviously, with the the way the lineup is right now, Bertuzzi going into the power play 1 spot there, Tavares moving off power play 1 into the 3rd line right now. Obviously, we haven't heard any noise from him. He seems to be, the consummate professional. You're never going to hear him complain.
Either.
Yeah. It just kind of like, where are you at in terms of, it feels like it is a justified demotion, and they're obviously playing better with him being in a more limited role. It just kind of opens up the conversation to what potentially happens. I mean, obviously he's got 1 more year on the books, but it just kind of it's a very tough sell, I think, as you're looking to build a team next year. If you now are saying your $11 million center is now playing 3rd line. Obviously not a concern right now, but it just kind of like, what do you do with that? Again, he's got a no movement clause, so he ain't going anywhere. But
No, I wouldn't expect. You're not going to move JT. He's a Leaf. I expect him to be a Leaf until the end of his career. I just don't see him leaving at this
no,
point, right? And so, yeah, it sucks that he has another year on his contract, but I think come next season he's probably back in the 2C role. I feel like this is more of a
short
now
term.
thing than a
Yeah.
future. I don't even know if come playoff time, with how the ups and downs of the season go, if these will be the lines going into playoffs. Obviously, you like the idea of the Leafs continuing this hot streak and for these lines to work all season. But
Right.
more likely than not, there will be some changes come playoff time. And I'm pretty sure that Tavares will probably find himself back in the 2C. And
Well, you're going to have to play him more just because of like the face-off
face
efficiency. So he'll get
matchups
his
and
minutes
everything
for
like that.
sure.
I'd rather have
Right.
JT out there than Domi for a defensive zone,
Or even Camp because of, just overall face-off. Camp is good at defensive zone face-offs, but overall he's like a 51%. So,
And
yeah.
it's like JT's still getting his minutes. He's still playing his 16 or so minutes a game. So to expect any noise from just an absolute professional and
Yeah,
captain
you
like
won't
he
hear
is,
anything.
I think
I think
that
more I just find it like kind of like funny how obviously because they're winning, you're not expected to hear any noise from him or even any of the media. But it just seems like something that's gone overlooked and how quickly that's kind of happened, where it's like he's now your third line center and he's now getting power play 2 minutes. It's just kind of like a huge shift from where he was. And yeah, as long as the wins keep happening, you're not going to worry about it. Hopefully he won't. I don't believe he would, but it's just kind of a very sudden and abrupt change in kind of what they were before and now what they are with Tavares in a diminished role.
I still think that it's funny because you can't have it both ways. You can't ask for Bertuzzi to get PP1 minutes, and you can't ask for Domi to get top 6 role and for Domi to play more, and then be like, oh, how now Tavares isn't getting power play. What's the point of having him at 11 million?
Right.
You can't have it both ways, right?
No, you can't play 7 guys in your top 6.
It's the perk of having such a deep, talented like offensive forward group. I wouldn't say we're like great in 200-foot game, but all of these guys on the Leafs like top 6, top 9 are just really good, talented offensive guys.
Yeah,
and it's the perks of having a lot of guys that can play hockey, right? You just
for sure.
like Tavares is getting pushed into a limited role, and I think it was bound to happen eventually, but it just sucks he's making 11 mil and people are going to harp on that.
Of course, yeah.
But when they're calling for it and then it happens, they're mad. Like,
Yeah.
One of those things.
So talking about potential for next year, where are you at with the guy who's obviously everyone is kind of moving away from the, I can't believe Bertuzzi is here, he's doing nothing, to now probably everyone's bringing their Leaf jersey to get crested today with Bertuzzi's number on it. Where are you at in terms of like possibilities in extending him, re-signing him? Do you need to see more? Or are you saying, hey, if there's a contract out there with a favorable, maybe not so much a discount, but at a good term, good rate, where are you at with Bertuzzi?
He has to prove it in playoffs to me.
Okay.
He has 10 goals this year. 3 of them came on Saturday.
Yeah, you have to add that for sure. Yeah.
I feel like after one game, everybody's jumping back on the bandwagon. We signed while he was doing shit. Everybody was like, he's gonna prove it in playoffs. He's gonna prove it in playoffs. We signed him for playoffs, so go out there and prove it. If he doesn't, then he obviously isn't what we need, and we go another direction. I think it's pretty simple. Yeah. I think the same kind of goes for Domi. Obviously, I love Domi. I think he embodies what it means to be a Leaf in a lot of ways. He loves to wear the blue and white. You can tell.
For sure.
But he's another guy where when he was struggling, everybody was like, he's going to show up in playoffs. He's going to be that kind of guy we need in playoffs. So he has to go out there and prove it.
Yeah, for sure. And
I'm
I
not
think if you
asking
kind
that
of
we win the cup with these guys. I'm asking even if it's a say second
contribute,
round defeat. I just want them to be not the reason why we didn't win.
right? Yeah, if you can do way more than Callie Yardcroak, Kerfoot, and Pierre Engvall
Yeah,
have done for us in recent postseasons, I think everyone will be kind of happy with what you're bringing to the table. Because you look on Twitter, and obviously throughout the year, you get obviously the flavor of the month, Leaf performer, anyone who has a good run of success, couple games that they've looked really good. It's like, yeah, you got to re-sign him. So at this
exactly.
point, we're basically re-signing everyone. Yeah, we got to bring back Domi now. We got to bring Bertuzzi back. Got to bring Benoit back. Got to re-sign Lily. It's
Yeah,
like, okay. And how about if we get bounced in the first round and you've already re-signed these guys, or you at least moved forward with the expectation to re-sign them? Like, and that's where I agree with your point. Let's see what they do in the playoffs. Because if it is an early exit, you can't run it back with the same group
no,
like we've done for the
100%
last
no,
5 years. You got to find ways to upgrade.
Yeah, and that's I don't want to think about it like that, but in the case we do get bounced in 6 in the first round, let's say, which has probably won't happen.
No, that won't happen.
I'm
Stop with
pretty,
that bad mojo. No
I'm
bad
pretty
mojo here.
positive. I'm not saying we're gonna win the cup or anything, but I just want these guys to prove why we're paying 5.5 for Bertuzzi when he only has 10 goals. We're paying him 5.5
Exactly.
because supposedly he's gonna be some next playoff performer because he played well in 7 games last year.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Based on our cap situation, you probably don't have $5.5 million to give to someone who's a 10-goal scorer.
Yeah. And
if that's all he is. Yeah.
But obviously you could say, oh, he's not. I think at best he's a 20.
Yeah.
20 goal, 50-point guy. So if you wanted to re-sign him and he does, let's say, show up in the playoffs and plays well and the Leafs do well, then you're maybe around. Maybe I'd get back to 5.5. If we won the cup, I'd give him 6. I don't care.
Yeah, and that's obviously going to change based on the success or lack thereof that they have in the postseason. So remains to be seen. But cap is going up, so anyone who's a UFA will probably see a couple $100K being thrown at them at the very least compared to what they've taken up until now. So for a guy like Bertuzzi, yeah, he's probably not going to have to take 4 or 4.5 mil no matter how bad he does down the stretch, because there will be a team who's not even at the cap floor.
Well, yeah,
who's
exactly.
Going to say, yeah,
Foligno's getting 4+ from Chicago. So, of course, there will. But if Bertuzzi wants to have a chance of winning, as kind of what
and stay home,
alluded to
and
by,
stay home.
Yeah. And by, he came from Boston to Toronto. I'm sure he had other options on one-year deals that were, similar money, but more guaranteed minutes or more guaranteed PP1. But I think he wanted to come here, for the chance of winning and playing alongside stars. If he wants to have that opportunity, then let's see a discount. I feel like the Leafs don't get a lot of that.
They don't get as much as they should.
When you have Matthews, Nylander, and Marner not really taking those hometown discounts, it doesn't set a great precedent for the rest of the group.
No, and I think it's been happening pretty much every year and didn't change with Tree Living, unfortunately, where it's like, these guys get the money that you kind of expected they could get in the open market. But you were like, it'd be nice to see one guy take a little bit less money to play in Toronto. Like that used to have a little bit more appeal. And maybe it doesn't come down to that. Maybe it is just a matter of you can't expect any athlete to take less no matter what city, what market you are. But it does feel like players in other cities for other teams are taking a little bit less to stay.
I feel like it's something that when you get older, like I think when JT has his $11 million contract expire, I think he takes a.
You think he's going to take less than 11?
Approach. I think it's a very Bergeron-like approach on a 2-3 year deal at $3 million.
Geo deal.
Yeah, or if he wants to be that kind of guy. Because the thing with when you're a Leaf, you make so much money on like commercials and partnerships and all this that you just wouldn't have if you say went to Columbus.
Yeah, you can't turn on your TV here without seeing
I see
Nylander or Matthews.
I see
Uber Eats
Matthews
commercial.
Uber Eats order or
Yeah.
Marner skip the dishes with Draisaitl.
Yeah.
I see that one all the time. You see, like
Nylander, the
Nylander
Rogers,
Yeah.
TPC one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just these opportunities that aren't afforded to in other markets. And yet, it would have been nice if we saw Nylander come in at more of a 9.5 or Matthews to give us an extra gear or two.
Totally.
Because I think his 13 million is more than fair.
Yeah. I mean, I think the AAV was for me. I just would have liked to see another year or two added on.
It'll be interesting. I like to see if Marner, who also just loves to be a Leaf, I want to see,
and also loves to maximize every dollar too.
I want to see if he'll be the first of the group to really say, "I'm not only will I sign here 8 years, but just give me what I was making before," kind of thing.
I love the thought. I don't see it at all. I don't see it all with him. I think he's going to be like, okay, you gave, especially with how he's playing right now, he's going to be very close to Nylander's point total at the end of the year. And I think he's saying, okay, even if Nylander had more points than me this year, have a look at what I've done before then. Have a look at the point comparison between me and Nylander. You're giving me at least what Nylander's at, but I guarantee you Marner's ass starts at around 12.5, 12.75, especially if he's signing for 8.
See, that's the thing, right?
Scary.
It's hard when you have so many, but when you have JT's 11 mil, obviously there's money to spend and the cap going up.
Yep. That's what you're used to. Yep.
But, you'd like to take that 11 million and put it into, goalie or top 4 defenseman kind of thing,
For sure. And I think Tree Living is going to push it. But yeah, I think Mitch Marner is going to come out of training camp saying, doing the same thing Nylander did. Nylander said all the reports were even in the summer, even though that was before his amazing start to the year, Nylander was already telling Toronto it's 11, 11.5. To get me to sign right now, it's 11, 11.5. And he bet on himself. It was a great bet.
Yeah.
Clearly. Yep. But I think Mitch Marner will do something similar. It's like, you're not going to sign me in September or October for 10.5 or 11.
If Marner's not careful, though, he could end up down the Johnny Gaudreau path to irrelevancy.
Potentially. And I was worried that Nylander would do that.
But Marner and Gaudreau kind of play more similar games than Nylander, where Nylander, he's a goal scorer. Marner plays a very pass-first game, and I think his game benefits a lot from the fact he plays with Matthews, and obviously vice versa as well.
Yeah.
Right? He's not going to be playing with Matthews anywhere he goes. I think he knows that. He's already made a ton of money. I think that we're a year ahead in this conversation.
No, exactly. It's just kind of like talk right now. It's not meaningful yet. Yeah.
Yeah. But if we do poorly in the playoffs again this year, I feel like his name, with his contract coming to the end the soonest, he'll be the first one that all Leaf fans put the blame on, which sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
yeah, just kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think we'll have a lot more to talk about as we kind of see, to your point, how the playoffs go. But yeah, starting to look ahead in terms of, where does the kind of incremental money come from if you are looking to pay Marner what he's going to be asking for? Where do you get those improvements? So interesting topics for sure to kind of see down the road. But let's kind of wrap up by looking ahead to tonight. I'm seeing the current odds, and maybe you can help explain this to me. The Maple Leafs are like a minus 170 favorite. I know they're the home team, but that seems very aggressive. I don't know if there were some Leaf fans on Twitter who are working at FanDuel who posted those odds, but that seems aggressive. No, like obviously Vegas going to be looking for revenge. There's no additional injuries on the Vegas front other than obviously Mark Stone, Eichel that missed last week's game 2. Aiden Hill is playing. I'm a little bit confused with that one. That's a hefty favorite line.
I told you last week, I'm going to stay with it. I think the Leafs are going to win both these games. There's no reason they should lose to Vegas.
Okay.
As their team stands now with really not a lot of goal-scoring threats outside of Marchessault and Carlson, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like I see 165 on the score. I think that's fair.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because obviously they're not changing the odds because I saw even around like minus 150 earlier today and last night. So obviously with the Lily absence tonight, FanDuel that isn't shifting the lines, or the books aren't shifting the lines. So they're still all in on the blue and white.
Yeah.
So that's nice to see.
Yes.
And do you have a call?
7 straight going on 8. Let's see it happen.
Yeah, because they're going to make a push towards the all-time franchise record of 10 that they set in 93, 94. So that'll be something to look forward to this week. I guess the 10th, tying it would come against the Rangers. And I'm sure this wouldn't present a storyline. Number 11 could come against the Bruins. That would be sweet.
That would be.
That'd be unreal. All right. So, yeah, hopefully we'll have another win to talk about when we hook back up on Thursday for the next episode. Sure. Enjoy the game tonight, bud.
Yeah, you too.
We're talk on Thursday.
For sure. Have a good one.
See ya. You too.